Endovascular aortic aneurysm repair, or EVAR, is truly one of modern medicine's great success stories. It's a much less invasive way to fix a potentially deadly bulge in the body's main artery. But here's the question: what happens when this incredible high-tech fix starts to leak? Because for a surprising number of people, that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, that's the number. For up to a quarter, 1 in 4, of all patients who get this procedure, that becomes their reality. It could be days later, or even years down the road, but a leak develops. And we're not talking about a minor drip here. This is a serious complication that puts the patient right back in harm's way.
So what exactly is an endoleak? Well, the technical term is persistent blood flow back into the aneurysm sac, the very thing the surgery was meant to stop. But here's a much simpler way to picture it. Imagine surgeons have put a new, strong liner inside a weak, bulging pipe. An endoleak is what happens when blood somehow finds a path into that space between the new liner and the old pipe wall and starts putting pressure on it all over again.
Okay, so to fix a leak, you first have to know where it's coming from, right? And in medicine, that means you've got to classify it. Doctors have actually mapped out 5 distinct types of endoleaks, and each one is defined by where that blood flow is starting.
And this diagram here just lays it all out so clearly. So, for example, a type 1 leak, that's the one on the far left, happens right at the connection points, either the very top or the very bottom of the graft. Now, type 2 is totally different. It's more of a backdoor leak, where smaller arteries start feeding blood back into the sac. And then you have type 3, which is actually a failure of the device itself, like a tear or a gap between the parts. Understanding this map is absolutely the first step to figuring out a solution.
And this is a really critical point, because even though there are 5 types, surgeons are pretty much laser-focused on one in particular, because its risk profile is just in a completely different league.
We're talking about type 1 endoleaks, and the reason they are so dangerous, well, it all comes down to one simple word: pressure. And you can see the huge difference right here. On the left, you've got type 1 and type 3 leaks. These are basically a direct pipeline to the aorta, which is the highest pressure blood vessel in your entire body. This high-pressure flow can make that aneurysm sac grow and, worst-case scenario, rupture. But on the right, you have type 2 leaks. They come from smaller, lower-pressure arteries. They're often harmless, and you know what? Sometimes they even go away on their own. That's why type 1 leaks demand immediate action.
And the stakes? They could not be higher. A major analysis found that when a repaired aneurysm ruptures years later, a type 1 endoleak is the culprit in over half of all cases, 52%. So the takeaway is crystal clear. Finding and fixing a type 1 leak isn't optional. It is a race against rupture.
So let's break that down even more. A means a leak at the top, or the proximal end, while IB is down at the bottom, the distal end. And we know that certain things can make a type A leak more likely, like if the aortic neck, where the graft has to seal, is too short or at a weird angle, or if it's too wide, or if there's a lot of clot or plaque there. These are all challenges surgeons have to deal with.
So, if these leaks are so dangerous, how do we find them? This is where we shift from the problem itself to the detective work, and it really does require a lifetime of vigilance.
This search starts right there on the operating table. They do a final angiogram to check the seal before the patient even wakes up. But that's just the beginning. There's a CT scan about a month later, and after that, the patient gets regular imaging for the rest of their life, just to make sure that repair is holding strong. And doctors have a whole toolkit for this kind of surveillance. The main workhorse is the CT angiogram, or CTA. But to cut down on radiation exposure over a patient's lifetime, they might use ultrasound instead. And for those really tricky cases where the leak is just hard to find, they can pull out advanced techniques like a dynamic CTA or even an invasive angiogram to get the final answer. So once a dangerous type 1 leak is found, that clock is ticking. But here's the good news. Surgeons have an incredible and growing array of tools to plug that leak and make sure the aorta is secure again. And we can really group all these solutions into 2 main strategies. The first idea is to reinforce the original seal, basically to make that existing connection stronger. The second, which is a bit more involved, is to extend the repair, to actually build a whole new sealing zone higher up. The simplest approach is often what they'll try first. A surgeon can go in and inflate a large soft balloon right at the spot of the leak. The goal is pretty straightforward. Just use that pressure to smush the graft fabric more firmly against the aortic wall and hopefully close off whatever tiny channel is letting blood escape. Now, if just pressing on it isn't enough, they can bring in some hardware, We're talking about endoanchors. These things are basically tiny 4 mm long screws that they can deploy from inside the graft to literally pin it to the wall of the aorta. It provides a much stronger, more permanent seal.
But what happens when trying to patch up the original landing zone just isn't going to work? Well, then you have to move the seal to a healthier part of the aorta. You have to extend the whole repair.
And wow, you can really see the power of that approach right here. On the left, you see that active, high-pressure leak. That's that dark cloud of dye spilling out of the graft. But then on the right, after they've placed a custom-made extension piece with little holes or fenestrations for the kidney arteries, the leak is completely gone. I mean, that is a perfect, lasting seal.
So that custom graft is an amazing piece of engineering, but it has one big catch. It can take weeks to manufacture. So what do you do if a patient's aneurysm is growing fast and they need a fix, like right now?
And this is where surgical ingenuity is just so cool. It's called the chimney or snorkel technique. Instead of waiting for a custom part with built-in holes, surgeons use off-the-shelf components. They extend the main aortic graft up past the organ arteries, and then they run smaller parallel stent grafts alongside it, like chimneys, to keep blood flowing to the kidneys. It's a really complex but immediate solution for a super urgent problem.
So you really have these two advanced options, right? The fenestrated cuffs are these elegant, custom-built solutions, absolutely perfect for planned repairs. The chimney technique, on the other hand, is the versatile, ready-to-go option for emergencies or really tricky anatomy. Two different tools for two very different situations.
You know, a quote from the source material really just gets to the heart of all this. It says, "The patient must be informed about not only the planned procedure, but also for any future additional procedures that may need to be done again." It really highlights that this is a lifelong partnership, built on the understanding that this is an ongoing process.
And that is the crucial takeaway from all of this. An endovascular repair, as amazing as it is, it doesn't just end when the patient leaves the operating room. Its success over the long haul depends entirely on a shared commitment from the medical team and the patient to a lifetime of just being vigilant.
Which leaves us with a final and pretty important question. You know, the push in medicine is always towards less invasive procedures. But as we rely more and more on these complex devices inside the body, the challenge shifts. It's not just about surviving the operation anymore. It's about making sure the repair is truly durable. How do we build solutions that don't just work today, but are truly built to last a lifetime?